The issue is whether we've accounted for all these things. And someone who's really, truly advocating solution, that's what they have to be striving for, or they're obviously going to fail to reach us. So I hope that we are doing that now, but nonetheless, we're not listening, and so I'm being asked to prove something which isn't even the thing that we really actually need to prove. So I'm going to provide the proof of the thing that we need to prove, only to a small degree. The truth of the matter is still what's relevant today is who has the solution.
I don't mind.
Well, sure.
I don't mind. I mean, the Zeitgeist, what can I say? The equation is coming out of the problem, and at some point, someone's going to do the remainder to see what the solution is. Anyway, if you haven't read my bank math, you don't know where I'm coming from. So let's just say at this stage, let's pick a date. What day is it today? Friday? You want to do it tomorrow?
Today's Thursday. Tomorrow would be Friday. Yeah. So
right.
Tomorrow would work good. Better.
You got to go read my bank math first. I don't want to start talking to a guy who hasn't seen my math and have to start explaining something. You got to do some homework first. I'm the professor of banking systems engineering, the only one in the world. All right?
Well,
the only qualified systems engineer on the planet who's pushing for abolishing interest rates too. So go check my math, my thesis, before we do the show. Because I don't want to have to say, gee, didn't you read my math?
Well,
get it? I'm not your average guest here, okay? I've been in banking systems engineering for 31 years, and I ran casinos before then, banks. So I have...
Well, I've been doing it for 43 years, John, and the math is simple arithmetic. So
no, the math is exponential functions if you want to deal with interest properly, okay? So go check out my math. It's got algebra 2, the P over P plus I, but it's got exponentials, e to the IT, differential equations, dB over dt is equal to IB, Laplace even the control systems, you'll be able to watch it with electricity and it'll make sense to you. But you got to do your homework first, please. Right?
Well, John,
you go Google for bank math, because if you do the show without knowing where I'm coming from, it won't be as much fun. I'll have to point you out to stuff that's already out there. So it's only like 10 pages, so go do it.
10 pages. Okay, I'm looking at your page right now.
Just click on bank math. Okay, it's /bankmath.htm.
Facebook.com?
No. JOHN
Okay, hang on one second. Let me get another tab open here.
/bankmath.htm. And if you Google, that's a keyword, bank math. Together, my analysis comes up. So it's a mem, an internet mem.
Well, what makes you say that you're the only system engineer or professor of this?
Well, find another.
Well, you're speaking to one.
Well, you got a degree in engineering?
No, I don't.
Okay, well, I'm saying I do, and I'm backing you up. Get it? I do. They can't argue with me. I show them the control system. I show them the math. I say, what kind of moron tries to pay 11 when they only printed 10? You got to run it like poker chips, 10 for 10.
Okay.
That's it.
Well, John,
go do your homework and then we'll speak again, okay?
Okay, sounds good, John. So this one page, Let's Banking System Engineering Math. That's it.
That's right.
Okay.
All right. That's
now, I don't have a degree in engineering, but
you'll be able to follow most of it, I'm sure.
I've worked my life in engineering.
Oh, then you will have no problem.
I am a proficient engineer.
It's going to back up everything you've ever talked about a mathematically perfect economy, but just in a higher math. So enjoy.
Okay, John, I'll take a look at it. And now for a time tomorrow, after any time from noon on ought to be pretty good here. for me. So that would be 3 in the afternoon on for you.
Yeah.
So name your time.
Oh, anytime. You call me. I should be sitting here most of the day.
Okay, good. Alrighty.
You said you're just going to tape it anyway, right? So whenever we connect, we go.
Just gonna tape it, and we'll take it as we go. No scripted, and just go for it. Is there anything you'd like to talk about? I mean,
Well, no. Why don't I make the premise of what? If you go and you YouTube or Google under videos for Prime Minister of the Planet, I come up. So I'm the only person who's running with a program to help everybody on the planet, not just Canadians or Americans or my group. So, and of course you realize that if I'm going to fix the banking system and the mechanical fix, of course it helps everybody. So, I ran for Prime Minister of Canada, and I ran for Prime Minister of Ontario and for Mayor of Ottawa, and I'm in the Guinness Book of Records for running in more elections to abolish interest rates than anyone else in the history of mankind, 74 times now, with 73 losses and no wins. So what can I say? It's been my mission in life since I realized that they were the poker chips. And I've had an incredible number of adventures as bank fighter extraordinaire. If you Google for that, you get me, or bank protester, or interest rate protester, or my favorite's bank fighter extraordinaire. And I started showing people how to stall their mortgages by arguing the slothful servant story out of the Bible. And I, attacked the banks myself with motions in the courts to try and force them to restrict their computers to a pure service charge and abolish the interest charge. Neat, eh? What an interesting application. Took 3 of them to the Supreme Court of Canada, actually 5, to the Supreme Court of Canada in the 80s. Because I said, if Canada, the Canadian worldwide network, goes to interest-free chips based on collateral, who's going to go to the Rothschild or the Rockefeller banks to get with their collateral to get chips at 10% when they can come with the same collateral to get the same chips back by the same collateral at 0% by the Canadian system? And the Canadian chips would have become the worldwide standard if we had been the first to go interest-free, right?
Well,
if Canada had gone interest-free to a mathematically perfect economy, you'd have been able to access it from the States, and you'd have ended up using Canadian chips. So I asked the Supreme Court of Canada in
that would have been true if it were if it were, let's say, truly feasible for a bank in Canada to collateralize,
monetize the collateral.
To honor and process collateralizations of production, however.
Like a casino does with chips, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, but
you're going to use casino cashier chips to run it.
Yes, but see, the Canadian government doesn't really have jurisdiction in the United States to enforce.
That's not the point. If everybody in the States wants to come up and borrow some Toronto casino poker chips and go back home and use them, that's the point.
The interruptions are getting extremely aggravating here. The simple point that I wanted to make here is that the Canadian government has no business thinking, or Canadian people, or this man, have no business thinking that they can enforce a collateralized debt in the United States. The United States is a nation with its own laws and judicial processes for enforcing them. And so, and executive processes, of course, as well. But the thing is, so the Canadian government or a bank in Canada or anywhere else in the world is not the proper vehicle for issuing enforceable promissory obligations, which is what the matter amounts to. And so it's preposterous for him to be going on complaining. Oh, it doesn't matter. And this is, because the whole thing is, if the obligations aren't enforceable, the money has no integrity. You see, so that's the whole thing there. And he's going to talk about the money that he's proposing here further. So, with that in mind, I want you to, just evaluate his further explanation of his proposition of LETS as follows.
I just wanted to make Canadian chips available interest-free to the whole world by our global network at the time, and say that if you've got the collateral to back up our chips like we do in Canada, well, we'll let you use Canada chips interest-free too.
Well, being as a promissory obligation requires collateralization.
Well, your word that you'll work it off is all I now need, because I'm pushing time banks. I even got invited to the United Nations to do the speech on the banking system of the new millennium, because I'd financed the first LETS system. You heard of LETS?
Sure I have.
All right, well, I financed the first LETS software, my gift to the planet, freeware. And in 2000, I get invited to the UN because of that. And they say, well, what would we call our global time bank? And I said, UniLETS.
Oh, John, hold on a minute. Fill me in a little bit more on this. Are you telling me that the United Nations was interested in replacing the world banking system?
Not the United Nations, the Millennium Forum of NGOs who wrote the Millennium Declaration. 1,350 delegates showed up in New York during the year 2000. And then after that was the religious summit of religious leaders. Then after that was the political summit of political leaders. And finally, the last summit of student leaders. Okay? Well, I was invited to the first one, the Millennium Forum of NGOs, non-government organizations.
Which, of course, is certainly not the United Nations, as he said.
And because I had financed the first LETS system, I got invited to do the speech on banking in the new millennium. And then they asked me, what should we call this global time bank? And I said, UniLETS. LETS is local employment trading software. And a UniLETS would be a United Nations, international, and local employment trading software. See, I'd gone to do a lecture tour in Europe in '99, and I ran into guys who were running LETS, not at a central computer where you phoned in your transactions of time, whatever green dollars they linked to the community. But they said, screw this central phoning. We're all going to carry our accounts in our hand, and I will initial yours and you will initial mine when we do a deal. And that's how I can show people how good I am and all the deals I've done, and I'm no bum trying to take advantage of you. I said, wow, I can have the best of both worlds. Centralization is there so people can look in to see whether you're going to take advantage of them and complaints about you.
But as enforceability is not, what's the difference?
And taking it out, doing it in a notebook makes it easier, gets rid of having to do all that recording. But I said, I'm going to take my notebook and I'm going to post it on the internet. So I started the first P2P time bank account for me. And when I got back from Europe, where I had paid for 39 nights out of 40 with an IOU for a night back in Canada, worth 5 hours between countries, because students in Europe said this is the pain in the ass. 300, they're paying themselves 60 French francs per hour in France and 6 green pounds per hour in Britain and 20 green marks per hour in Germany. And they said this is such a pain. We're simply going to keep tabs in hours between countries. So when I got back, I owed 39 nights out of 40. I emailed IOUs for 195 hours owed for all my accommodations in Europe, and people could come and get accommodations back in my place at 5 hours per night too.
So, excuse me, how did you convince the motel operators or hotel?
It wasn't motel operators. It was people who belonged to the LETS system. It was private people who put us up in their homes in exchange for an IOU for a night back in here. Go to facebook.com/John.Turmel.